Tawny Newsome might be stepping out of animation and into live action more regularly as Mariner in her brand new comedy series. If you love chaos, charisma, and captain level snark, this one's for you. Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Well, a little bit of news to talk about today in regards to this new Star Trek comedy series that's helmed by Tawny Newsome and Justin Simien. There hasn't been a great amount of Trek news to discuss in recent weeks, so the news front's been a little bit quiet, but we've got maybe a tiny bit more information about this new Star Trek comedy that's potentially coming to our screens. The guys at Trek Movie talked to Tawny Newsome about her new comedy series that is very well and truly being developed at the moment. So we obviously know that it's a workplace comedy set in the 25th century on a vacation planet that isn't Riser, and it's not part of the Federation per se. Tawny said that developing the show has been an interesting process in the sense that you've got to get the tone right, and it's got to sit somewhere comedically, but obviously not be so crazy out there that, you know, it's not going to work with a live action Star Trek series, because you can't be as wacky and zany probably as an animated show like Lower Decks. But the most interesting things that she had to say was regarding herself, in the sense that we haven't really had a reveal before of who is likely to be in this series, but it seems like Tawny is developing this show for herself. It seems like she is going to be in the show in a very large capacity. So when asked, is she going to be in the series, she said yes, she's developing the show for herself. Tawny said, what we're really working on exploring is the sort of overlooked sections of what happens when a world and a culture that is not in the Federation, and what happens when they decide they want to be in the Federation. So they're Federation outsiders, and what's kind of the nitty-gritty involved with joining the Federation. Tawny has said that she wants the show to take place in the 25th century, and it for to happen after the events of Season 3 Star Trek Picard, so that anybody who was in Star Trek Picard could potentially pop up in this new comedy series in some capacity, if that was something that they wanted to do. And when asked, are you seeing yourself on the show, she says yes, she's developing it for herself. She says, I'm an actor / writer. I write for myself. I write to create roles for myself. That is why I got into writing. That is why I sent Alex Kurtzman scripts in the first place, every script I had written for me, because this business is so hard and you have to create opportunities for yourself. So I write to create roles for me, and that is the goal for this show. When asked whether she would be in it as Mariner, she couldn't reveal that piece of information, but considering it's a comedy and considering Tawny Newsome is writing it, it pretty much seems logical that if she was doing that, she would most likely be in it as Mariner. But what does this mean for the show? What does this mean for the canon of Star Trek and the history of both Lower Decks and things that are happening in the 25th century? Now, we know that Lower Decks was set around 2382 or thereabouts in terms of the 5th season of Lower Decks, and that Season 3 of Picard was set in 2401. So basically, there's a 20-year gap between the end of Lower Decks and Season 3 of Picard. Which means if Mariner was going to be in this new comedy series, she would be 20 years older than how she appeared in Season 5 of Star Trek Lower Decks. So say at that time when her and Boimler took over as kind of joint provisional first officers on the Cerritos, Mariner would have been in her, say early 30s, maybe around 30, 31, 32, maybe that kind of ballpark. So if this show was going to be set 20 years after that means Mariner would be around 50 or in her early 50s, which seems like it still could be pretty conceivable. Tawny Newsome is 42 years old. She's 42, and she was obviously playing someone who was probably 10 years younger than that in Star Trek Lower Decks, and obviously also the Those Old Scientists episode of Strange New Worlds last season. So she's a 42-year-old playing a, say, 32-year-old. So I guess if a 42-year-old can play a 32-year-old, a 42-year-old can also play a 52-year-old. That's not a stretch at all, considering the lifespan of people who live in the 25th century is obviously a lot older. People, are probably living to 130 or thereabouts in that particular time. it's completely plausible that the character of Mariner would be 52 and, still look like Tawny looks at 42. That's completely plausible to do. And obviously there's been no confirmation that she is playing Mariner. And there has been a history of Star Trek actors that have returned to Star Trek in other roles, apart from the ones they're mainly known for. For example, Jeffrey Combs, who played, Wei Yun, and he's played Brunt the Ferengi, and he's played many other roles in live-action Star Trek. But they've all been in heavy makeup, I guess, so that he can kind of disguise his actual, appearance. James Cromwell, who played Zephram Cochrane, also showed up in a couple, an episode of Next Generation as a character in that episode. I think it was Hunted, And also that episode where he was an alien and he was kind of fighting with Quark about a torpedo or something on the Defiant, I think, at one point as well. So he's showed up as multiple different characters within Star Trek as well. So there's plenty of precedent where actors have played multiple different roles. That being said, if Tawny was going to play a different role in this show, I think she would need to be in heavy prosthetic makeup so that she didn't look like Mariner, because we have obviously seen her in Mariner in Strange New Worlds. If you're going to the effort of developing your own comedy series, and obviously she has a fondness for the character of Mariner, it seems completely reasonable that this is going to be a Mariner show. What is Mariner doing in her early 50s in the Star Trek universe? Potentially in the last 20 years, maybe she got a command, but she's never really been that ambitious for command. Although maybe after seeing her parallel universe self in season 5, maybe that, has changed a little bit and she's not in that sort of destructive cycle of wanting to kill herself that she sort of spiraled into at one point, but seemed to get out of it by the end of the season. But it's probably more likely that she's had some time in Starfleet, she's risen through the ranks, maybe got to the rank of commander or something then, and then maybe wanted to see change rather than, flying around in starships. Maybe she wanted to have a bit of a sea change, career change, taking up ownership of some sort of resort type place that, services Federation citizens or something like that. Maybe she's kind of like a female version of Murray Bartlett's character in the first season of White Lotus, where she's slightly wacky manager running a resort. So I can kind of see her in that sort of Mariner character, doing wacky kind of almost Basil Fawlty type character that Murray Bartlett did such a great job of in season 1 of White Lotus. So something maybe in that ballpark, perhaps. I'm looking forward to knowing more about this show. It does sound intriguing, and Tawny Newsome is such a massive Star Trek fan, and she has a lot of Star Trek cred, so I kind of trust her to do the right thing to the franchise and have it be a Star Trek series that, despite its humour, can also be something that we can embrace. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section and we'll get chatting about that. If you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, please be sure to do so. Click on that big subscribe button and the bell and everything to stay up to date with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. And be sure to check out some of my cool t-shirts in the merch store, also hoodies and mugs and caps and stickers and everything as well. Pick up something, always at bargain prices, and help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back soon with my next video. Catch you guys then.